Hiya! Welcome to this, my 43rd episode of VideoFuzzy. I'm your host, Terry J. Aman, and in this installment, titled Studio 6 Feet Under, I coincidentally enough encounter the pilot episode of 6 Feet Under, a second claimant to mystical centrality for my media collection. Google's predictive search takes a turn for the hilarious in my classic collection, and in my current collection, The Notebook, Deadly Class, and T-Mobile grabs my attention with explosive logorrhea. Welcome to the show.
He doesn't have that on video, does he? We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy here.
And what's going on with me? I've been feeling a little overwhelmed with another week of gray, snowstormy weather. We're in the 971st day of February here, and for God's sakes, Elsa, pull it back any time now. Well, right now, this weekend, it's Saturday, I'm at the City Brew, and they say it's going to freeze up again tomorrow, but for right now, it's sunny, it's mild, it's just outrageously beautiful outside. I got out and enjoyed it some with a nice walk earlier, and whatever comes our way for however much longer it lasts, these sweet little respites are good for the soul. Oh, and whatever service they've got going here, I've got Smash Mouth singing I'm a Believer, spilling a little white mocha out from fresh memory of Monkey's keyboards and bass guitarist Peter Tork. R.I.P. fella. I'm a believer. Correction. Error. In episode 42, Life, This Podcast, and Everything, I asserted that Aaron Sorkin's production Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip could potentially be the mystical center of my media collection. Ties traceable to nearly any show in my collection in standard 6 degrees proximity to some element of Studio 60, usually a star. I gave a series of examples, one of which traced to Alec Baldwin's involvement in Nip Tuck, which he very much was. He played Dr. Barrett Moore in the Season 2 Joan Rivers episode. But as I was rattling off Baldwin's connective tissue, which, anyway, I've got a more direct connection for him with Matthew Perry and Friends, I actually said Adam Baldwin, which, yep, he's absolutely got direct Studio 60 ties as well, with Sarah Paulson and Serenity, but was not the reference I'd intended at that moment. Sorry for any confusion.
Friday Night Feature!
Anyway, as I was saying, I can trace vast swaths of my media collection just about effortlessly through a one-season Aaron Sorkin production from more than a decade ago. This past week I encountered the other half of that game, Alan Ball's HBO production of 6 Feet Under, which I pulled in from where it was edited for rebroadcast on Bravo, and the pilot episode of which I found on disc 632. The pilot episode introduces us to the Fishers, a family thrust into crisis when Richard Jenkins as paterfamilias Nathaniel Fisher, owner and operator of Fisher & Sons Funeral Home in L.A., is killed when the hearse he is driving is T-boned by a city bus. He'd been on his way to pick up his son Nate, played by Peter Krause, who flew in for Christmas break and was otherwise distracted by his new friendly benefit Rachel Griffiths as Brenda Chenoweth in pre-9/11 hypervigilance LAX. The show premiered during our innocence in June of that year when people could pull each other discreetly into convenient supply closets for a quick post-flight debriefing, which is weird they'd set a Christmas-themed premiere ahead of the other solstice, but apart from Nathaniel singing along with Bing Crosby's I'll Be Home for Christmas on the radio, there wasn't much indication of what time of year it was, and they actually had to keep reminding us several times that it was Christmas Eve. Back at home, Nathaniel's other son, David, played by Michael C. Hall, is getting ready for a viewing, and his mother, Ruth, is getting a roast ready for Christmas dinner. Daughter Claire, played by Lauren Ambrose, is getting baked as well, smoking crystal meth for the first time as the news of her father's accident begins to circulate. Thus, a pattern is established, the show itself tracking a routine of death, notification, identification, remembrance. Show creator Alan Ball centers his storytelling on a family whose relationship with death is perhaps more familiar than is usual, candid, visceral reactions jarring and surprising even to themselves when they are the ones suffering the loss. For instance, upon hearing the news, Ruth freaks out and throws the pot roast across the room. She tells David her husband is dead and the roast is ruined, assigning the exact same emphasis to each. Later, she is concerned they might not manage to reconstruct her husband's face acceptably, and what message would that send? David is concerned also, reacting to what appears to be the ghost of his father badgering him. "Oh, you're doing it? You're the worst one we've got. Can't Rico do it? You go file a spreadsheet or something. That's what you're good at. Nate comes in as David is muttering his response. Rico, played by Federico Gonzalez, is a master at reconstructing cadavers for viewing, but is more than a little ego-driven. He is valued, but he wants praise from the grieving families, his ego also on display in small talk at Nathaniel's viewing. To be fair, he does superior work, but even his best, most painstaking work is burned or buried almost immediately, which would have to get a little frustrating after a while. Nate's new friend Brenda attends the viewing, but somehow draws less attention than Matthew's St. Patrick as Keith, boyfriend of the closeted David, and cutting a handsome figure in his cop uniform. Keith wants to be there for him, but David is barely holding it together and is worried to death about appearances. At the graveside service, Nate recounts a scene from his tour in Europe, an island off the coast of Sicily. The boat he was on was transporting a body for burial, received by a small weep of mourners who, upon receiving the casket, wailed and beat their breasts and tore at their hair in their grief. He rejected the formulaic, sanitized response to loss. For example, when their mother wept openly at the viewing, David pulled her aside so as not to disturb the others. Burdened with the weight of the world, in a gritted aside to Keith, he said, "I'll be the strong one, the stable one, the dependable one, because that's what I do. They'll all fall apart because that's what they do." Teenaged Claire has to keep checking her responses, whether she was messed up by the loss or whether she was still tweaking from the meth. Nate was messed up at the loss of their father, the only father they would ever have, as he put it, and felt the funeral was the time to express that grief, not calmly shake a little dust from a shaker as the body is lowered into the grave, but to grab an actual clump of dirt, get his hands dirty with his expression of grief and loss. Ruth grabbed some dirt too, feeling dirty. As she broke down at the viewing, she confessed to her sons that she had cheated on their father. Reacting to the distance she'd felt growing in her marriage, she pursued a year-long affair with a hairdresser. She was wrecked by the fact that she cheated on Nathaniel. Well, by that, and by the fact that she's not more torn up by it than she is. As the service is dispersing, a representative from a national funeral chain approaches David about buying them out. David is overwhelmed by the responsibility he's under, but at this point we've only got a little glimpse at his motivation. Clearly he's still seeking his father's posthumous approval, but he also asserts that this is his life's work, the life he's chosen, and selling the funeral home, Fisher & Sons, would invalidate all of his life choices. Lots of other stuff happens in this episode as well. Nate confronts Claire about her drug use, and Claire confronts Nate for abandoning them. Once alone, David finally allows Keith to comfort him, if in private. We learn more about Brenda and her boundary-free nightmare of a family, and throughout the episode, from the opening scene even, they aired commercials aimed at funeral home directors, advertising hearses and embalming fluid and wound-filling putty. It was an interesting perspective. Peter Krause's Nate is the viewer perspective for this production, the one who ran away from the family business to manage a Whole Foods grocery in Seattle. He comes back with a fresh perspective and fresh reactions to what's going on. In a conversation with Brenda late in the episode, he sums it up: "My dad is dead, my mom's a whore, my brother wants to kill me, and my sister is smoking crack." As a through line for his character, Nate runs. He is a runner, but he also ran from the business as a child, as a young adult, and he might have just run all the way back to Seattle, but Ruth asks him to stay a few days longer, and he agrees. It's clear his family needs him. Out on a morning run, Nate sees an oncoming bus and has a vision of himself stepping out in front of it, ending it all. Peaceful. No more worries. He tracks this notion to a vision of his father from earlier, playing poker in the morgue, intoning, "We'll deal ya in our next round." Jolting back to reality, well, some version of it, Nate sees his father's ghost board a bus and wave goodbye, and suddenly every passerby on the street is making sustained eye contact with him, so creepy, over the strains of the Devlin's Waiting from 1997. Perfect vibe. Ball new for music. That tracks throughout a superior series to the close of the finale as members of the extended Fisher family draw their last breath above the contemplative strains of Sia's Breathe Me. Astonishing. Even edited for basic cable, 6 Feet Under was a boundary-busting, inventive, imaginative, risk-taking enterprise pursued fearlessly in an era of way more repression, even in Los Angeles, and discussed subject matters with a unique perspective only available to those in the death care industry, as their would-be corporate overlords referred to it. They managed to head off corporate buyouts over the headwinds of Nate and Claire's objections, but by the end of a few episodes, the central message being life is for the living. We are surrounded at all times by loss, and we are ultimately responsible for our own choices and our own happiness. And remembrance. Remembrance is important. Our past makes us who we are, and honoring the memory of those important to us is key to reinforcing our identity, those connections. Speaking of which, cross connection. Just like with Studio 60, the pilot episode was not the first appearance of this series in my collection, although, as with Studio 60, the pilot was the first appearance since I started this podcast. 6 Feet Under makes its first appearance in this collection on Disc 57, the Season 4 episode Grinding the Corn, auspiciously enough following directly upon the inaugural appearance of Studio 60 on Disc 56. I'm showing 15 episodes from Seasons 4 and 5 in little clusters between Discs 57 and 117, after which it vanishes again until the pilot episode appears on Disc 632, and then I log the first 4 episodes of 6 Feet Under between there and Disc 643. Despite its earlier timeline, airing as it did between 2001 and 2005, at 5 seasons and 63 episodes, 6 Feet Under has a slight advantage in this game, so I'll be scoring tighter connections to Studio 60 and its 22-episode run higher. Its core cast was no less luminary, however. For instance, Michael C. Hall gets us Dexter, which gets us Julie Benz and everyone in Buffy and Angel, including David Boreanaz, which now we've got everyone in Bones, and oh, but wait, I mentioned Adam Baldwin up there, played Hamilton in Angel and Jane in Firefly and Serenity. So, is he a quicker pickup for Studio 60 through Sarah Paulson or 6 Feet Under? Well, in this case, it looks like the Benz connection is more tenuous and the point goes to Studio 60. Rachel Griffiths pulls in everyone on Brothers and Sisters, so 6 Feet Under grabs Sally Field, grabs Callista Flockhart, grabs Balthazar Getty, but by the rules established, probably loses Rob Lowe to Bradley Whitford in The West Wing by dint of Studio 60's shorter run. Lauren Ambrose nabs everyone from The X-Files. She appeared in all of the Miracle Day episodes of Torchwood, and she handily snaps up Kevin Kline from In and Out, a full step removed from D.L. Hughley's Will Smith connection in The Wild Wild West, so that point, 6 Feet Under. And 6 Feet Under makes Peter Krause my own personal Kevin Bacon for this little diversion. Peter Krause was a core cast member for both 6 Feet Under and Aaron Sorkin's Sports Night, so however quickly we can trace a line to Krause and 6 Feet Under, we resolve a backdoor connection to Studio 60. Not to mention now everyone who's ever worked with Ryan Murphy through his appearance in 911, so that's the entire cast of Scream Queens and The New Normal, and Pose, for Christ's sakes. Dominique Jackson as Electra Abundance, Billy Porter as Father Pray Tell, and India Moore as Angel, barely one step removed from the cast of 6 Feet Under. But for the actual third rail in this game, Studio 6 Feet Under, trace it to Frances Conroy. Holy Christ, Frances Conroy, Myrtle effin' Snow, played opposite Studio 60's Sarah Paulson in the third season of Yep, that was Ryan Murphy's American Horror Story. So if you can track through her, you're pretty much at the power core. Maybe the most significant aspect of Academy Award winner Halle Berry's appearance in Catwoman point goes to 6 Feet Under. She pulls in Al Pacino from Scent of a Woman. She pulls in Steve Martin and Michael freaking Caine from Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, points to 6 Feet Under. Dylan McDermott, American Horror Story, Season 1, point 6 Feet Under. Conroy grabs everyone in We Bare Bears, everyone in How I Met Your Mother, and everyone in Royal Pains, including Mark Feuerstein, which gets us, whoops, that point goes to Studio 60, since Feuerstein appeared with Bradley Whitford in The West Wing. Same distance from a smaller target, 6 Feet Under, denied. Two talented casts, two amazing shows. It just highlights the reality that nothing in my collection is too far removed from greatness, and I couldn't be more pleased. In other cross-connections, I encountered Eric McCormick, that's Will from Will and Grace, in a couple of Season 2 episodes of Dead Like Me, Ashes to Ashes and Death Defying. His character arc closes out in the next episode, Forget Me Not, which I have not encountered yet. Also, I saw Dan Castellaneta from The Simpsons in an episode of Veronica Mars, Dr. Kinney in the 3rd season installment titled My Big Fat Greek Rush Week. Oh, I also show him with an appearance with Bradley Whitford in The Good Guys, Point Studio 60. Oh, and then in music videos, I spotted David Cross as DJ Woody, clowning in a goofish vision of the Strokes video for Juicebox. What I loved most about the Strokes music videos was their meta approach to them, especially lead singer Julian Casablancas' visible irritation with the format, just putting up with whatever set, whatever situation they're thrust into, playing the song on camera, but clearly wanting to be anywhere else doing anything else. This one was no different. They're in a crappy radio interview with Morning Zoo DJ, David Cross's DJ Woody. He's done zero prep, knows nothing about them, gets their name wrong, he calls them Stroke, and introduces their song Juicebox as Juicy Juice. As the song plays, we're treated to weird reactions in the weird lives of the listeners to this song, including, David Cross watching house cleaning porn, skater boys getting carsick in a taxi, rooftop lesbian kisses, and flip phone text connections in a men's washroom that fuel passionate guy-on-guy makeout sessions in a toilet stall. That's Stroke with Juicy Juice. And stay tuned for the morning fart song. Oh no you didn't. Oh no you did not. Etc.
Diving into the classic collection.
I love doing Foley work. I guess David Cross in a music video with the Strokes isn't exactly a cross-connection, but I did find excellent music videos in this particular armload of cataloging, including Fall Out Boy's Dance Dance, him singing Wings of a Butterfly, and Death Cab for Cutie singing Soul Meets Body. I also found my very favorite Monty Python sketch, The Trial of Harold Larch, actually referenced in my conversation with Nathan Irwin in episode 30. In the doc, Eric Idle as Harold Larch beseeches the court movingly for his freedom. Terry Jones as the judge asserts it's only a parking offense, but as public defender, John Cleese mounts an ambitious defense of him, calling such witnesses as the late Arthur Aldrich, Cardinal Richelieu, and, my very favorite, Graham Chapman as Fiona Lewis, a housewife of a certain age, who gives her testimony as follows. I swear to tell the truth, the old truth, and nothing but the truth. So anyway, well, I said to her, I said they can't afford that on what he earns. I mean, for the start, this feathers get up your nose, and I ask you, 4 and 6 a pound, and him with a wooden leg. I don't know how she puts up with all the problems she's had with her you-know-what. Anyway, it was a white wedding, much to everyone's surprise. Of course, they bought everything on the hire purchase. I think they ought to send them all back where they'd come from. I mean, you've got to be cruel to be kind. So Mrs. Sarah said so. She said the dead crab. She said, well, her sister's going to Rhodesia, what with her womb and all, and her youngest is thin as a file cabinet, and the goldfish, they've got whooping cough that keeps in water at the bat piece. Well, they do, don't they? I mean, you can't, can you? I mean, they're not even married or anything. They're not even divorced. He's in the KGB, if you ask me. He says he's a tree surgeon, but I don't like the sound of his liver. All that squeaking and banging every night in the small hours. Well, his mother's been much better since she had her head off. Yes, she has. And I said, you don't talk to me about bladders. I said, don't talk. I mean, before she is forcibly removed from the witness stand and shoved bodily from the courtroom. The case is resolved when Graham Chapman returns as Inspector Dim and invalidates Michael Palin's testimony as Cardinal Richelieu by pointing out that Cardinal Richelieu died in 1642. Aha! He fell for my little trap. He further asserted that this was, in fact, Ron Higgins, professional Cardinal Richelieu impersonator. Curse you, Inspector Dim. You are too clever for us naughty people. Cleese congratulates Dim. Dim sings that he'd prefer to be a window cleaner. Cleese sings he'd prefer to be an engine driver. The sketch runs out of steam under its own power. This sketch was a good illustration of why I wanted to record Monty Python sketches in the first place. I mean, I friggin' ate this stuff up, committing Fiona Lewis's testimony to memory best I could, and it has held space in my brain easily since 1989 at the latest. Other highlights from this set of cataloging include Nudge Nudge, Terry Jones' classic physical comedy Getting Undressed for the Beach, Ayla Buster Keaton ending hilariously on stage as a burlesque strip routine. Brilliant. Couple points of interest. I found the second season finale of The Shield, where the strike team basically hit the jackpot. The money train just has to stay cool until retirement. So, what could possibly go wrong? Lem, I'm looking in your direction. Also found the second season finale of Eureka, the 5th episode of Heroes, which I haven't really been rewatching. I've got an episode of Friday Night Lights, which is a confusing discovery. I'd sworn I'd never watched a minute of that production. I found the series premieres of 30 Rock and Ugly Betty, both of which were quite a lot of fun, and an especially strong season 4 entry of Doctor Who called The Doctor's Daughter, starring Georgia Moffat, the real-life daughter of 5th Doctor Peter Davison, and later the wife of 10th Doctor David Tennant. So, yeah, current showrunner Chris Chibnall, if you're ever at a loss for some storyline to pursue, you've got her still running around out there somewhere, completely unresolved. Just saying. I encountered a National Geographic special on Stonehenge, Stonehenge Decoded, which purported to trace the origins of the strange stone circle in Salisbury Plain, seemed to be highly speculative and occasionally inventive piece. I don't know how much is scholarship and research and how much is production license, given the Washington Post published a story this past week citing scientists claiming to source the stones to a quarry in western Wales some 200 miles away. Clearly, as of 2008, this was still a mystery we were unraveling, so the dozens of actors they had portraying ancient Celts moving stones along a river might have done it that way, sure, might have done it a million other ways too. For as sketchily sourced as this material necessarily was, at 92 minutes, they sure took a lot of time with it. I also found the pilot episode of something called Fear Itself, which opened as a summer-run suspense thriller series on NBC. We're dropped into the middle of what appears to be a hunting party gone wrong. 4 younger 20-somethings in a car, one of them badly hurt, the car itself in bad shape on a back road because they're avoiding the highway, and they're all very tense. The car actually breaks down in the middle of nowhere, and in the distance they spy this weird hunting lodge. They pack some supplies and drag their friend across a lake to see about getting help. Once inside, there's evidence of habitation, but no evidence of inhabitants. As they explore, looking for who lives there, they find strange drawings on the wall, radios switch on suddenly. Their friend cries out, a strange woman is tending to him, but they didn't see where she came from, and it's all very grim and mysterious and spooky. What drew my attention was one of the guys was Jesse Plemons, who played Todd in Breaking Bad. Oh, and he was actually also in Friday Night Lights, too. Weird. He made his first Breaking Bad appearance in Season 5, 2012, so it was pretty cool to see him in this. Now, that's already been plenty, but I've got 2 more things before moving on to my current collection. I wanted to mention the 4th season episode I found of MI5. In a less crowded field, this would have made an exciting feature unto itself. The team responds to a right-wing anarchist group targeting Muslim refugees to gain political power, and I had to double-check the year on this episode, first aired in 2005, but I guess what makes it adorable was this insurrection was contained to a 6-member board of councillors for a housing district and not, I couldn't help but notice, half a British electorate. Hey, good luck, you guys. Closing out this section, a production note. As I'm cataloging shows, I have different ways of finding out for sure what episode of any given show I'm cataloging so I know I've got the right one. One of them involves a Google search for a scrap of dialogue, which, if the dialogue is sufficiently unique, will generally narrow down to a specific episode. Say it's got a character's name or unusual phrasing, a couple of keystrokes, that's what'll come up. Well, in a 3rd season episode of Desperate Housewives, the women are discussing how they can help Bree get ready for her wedding, and Susan, I think it was, asks, how about we just talk her out of marrying a homicidal dentist? That seemed like a pretty good bet, so I entered homicidal dentist into my search window, and predictive text suggested near me. Homicidal dentist near me. I didn't want to hit enter. What would come up? Is this a feature of crime solving? As it turns out, the episode, in fact, was Season 3, Episode 2, It Takes Two, but for more reasons than one. Thank you, Google. That was easily the funniest predictive text completion I've ever seen in my life.
Current collection.
On to my current collection, I encountered Gina Rollins and the late James Garner in freeform presentation of The Notebook from 2004. Absolutely the most beautiful, well, Okay, yeah, the romance was weaponized C4 explosive schmaltz, but the source material for the movie as it played out on our screens, the movie starring Ryan Gosling and Rachel McAdams, two beautiful young people from different sides of the track whose families and life goals didn't seem to line up perfectly, was, as it turns out, a woman suffering the early stages of Alzheimer's, a woman who lived an amazing life with a man she loved and couldn't bear to forget that life, so she wrote it. Gina Rollins as Allie. She wrote it all down in a notebook, and as her illness progressed, she asked him, James Garner's Duke, Noah, to read it to her. She wanted him to read to her the story of their love and their life together until she could remember who she was and who they were. When I brought this movie in, I only watched the last 5 minutes or so just to make sure I'd recorded the whole thing before I deleted it from my DVR. Sometimes, especially in overnight recordings, there's an emergency alert or something happens. I just wanted to make sure that I had it. I knew nothing about this movie except the show description, which sounded interesting, and I've got to say, those performances blew me away. The love story between the young people, that's everything that happens. There's a lot of day-to-day stuff. This growing old crap, though, it ain't for sissies. Fighting, arguments, breakups, reconciliation, all of that weaves together to form what we see these two sad, scared, lost souls at the end fighting for each other. That spark, that connection, keeping it going because she's the only thing that's ever meant anything to him, and he is too. The way she wrote this story, he is. She makes herself figure it out, makes it mean what it does. As a person for whom memories are the most important part of his life, I've lost so much. So many memories are gone. Easily halfway through this journey I'm taking, and what I'm doing with this media project and this podcast is trying to hold on, trying to curate experiences, not just watch whatever's on, but figure out what it meant, what was going on at the time, a journey I'm sharing now, and who knows where it's going, but whatever breadcrumbs I can lay down. Just quick aside, when I took my first job at a county weekly in the early 90s, my academic advisor told me to keep a journal. I did, for years, but I've looked back on that since, back at letters I wrote to friends, back at writing I was doing at the time, and that guy's life was so little. That was sure, I had a tiny stage, but I had zero scope or insight, and I think a thing that happens with education is you feel like you're smart without actually being intelligent or having insight. I will say that that guy had excellent taste in music, and he read a lot of detective fiction, but his world was so little. I've traveled more in the last 8 years than I ever managed before. I've met amazing people and done things and tried things I never might have. I've friggin' lived more than I ever have in my whole repressed and buttoned-down life, and that first step, ironically enough, was get up from in front of the television and write my own story. So, a patient's desperate bid to grab hold of her own life and wring the last glorious drops of experience from it with the man that she has woven together this epic lifetime romance. That's the kind of life I want to have at the end, one that I am most desperate to remember. In other viewing, I mentioned that Sci-Fi has re-aired the first season of The Magicians, and I was blown away by the character tracks and storylines they laid in from the start. So many more things fell into place, character arcs and histories I was just lost without seasons later. This is a well-crafted series. When it matters if you missed something, that's a hallmark of some pretty good storytelling. As for the current season, this is mostly going to be the monster season, but I like the way the threads are weaving, and I'm fascinated to see where it's all going. Plus, Josh contracted sexually transmitted lycanthropy, and a couple episodes ago when he started wolfing out, I guess we'll see what happens with that. I also pulled in TNT's presentation of Suicide Squad, which I disagree. I do not think there's anything especially disappointing about that production. I mean, certainly the situation is outlandishly contrived, but what we get to see in Suicide Squad, which I have not seen elsewhere told nearly so well, is the epic love affair between the Joker and Harley Quinn. Jared Leto played the crap out of his Joker, complete psycho, and Margot Robbie's Harley matched him med for med. I'd have loved to watch them try building a criminal empire together. Really, though, Harley Quinn's fantasy life is a suburban housefrau version of Kimber Henry? I somehow doubt it. But until we track down that back door to the alternate universe in which people are falling all over themselves to make Suicide Squad 2, I think we're probably not going to get to see what that looks like. Deadly Class continues apace. This past week, Benjamin Wadsworth as Marcus finds himself in the crosshairs of a murderous and psychopathic Chester Wilson, played by Tom Stevens. A Million Little Things has stepped up some, where the executive chef had to refuse startup loan money from the uncle who had sexually abused her, that handoff facilitated by the mother who hadn't believed her, who she came to realize may also have been one of his victims. So high concrete walls came crashing down between these two characters in the wake of his all-too-convenient death. This past week, however, the most significant thing that happened was a buy-in investor stole her thunder in a glowingly positive review, but she needed to obsess over it for the rest of the episode. Her husband, Rome, got a boost of confidence when a screenplay he's written gets positive notes from a kid in the hospital waiting room, and more to the point, he wants to step out from his depression and try helping others. Good instinct. The reason we're in the waiting room, Maggie is getting surgery to remove her tumor, and her mom shows up, and this was fun. In her first meeting with Gary, apparently never seen a picture of Maggie's mom, gets into a road rage, "You took my parking space," fight with her out in the parking garage, and frankly comes off as a crazy person. You know who could use some counseling? Gary. He's got some serious anger issues. Oh my god, someone takes your parking space, you find another one. You don't yell and carry on and lay on your horn and later confront them about how they took your stapler. "It's my red string stapler, I'm going to burn the building down." You're an adult. You have beaten cancer. You grow up, mutter some people's children, you find another parking spot, and everyone's life goes on. I'm really hoping we get back into the John Dixon suicide mystery storyline soon. These personality blow-ups with Gary are not good use of time, energy, or craft. And TBS has premiered what looks like the freeware version of The Good Place, called Miracle Workers. It stars Steve Buscemi as God, who is not happy with the way things are going down here. Unfortunately, he's constrained by natural laws to accomplish much of anything by way of divine intervention, so the people he's got answering prayers are overwhelmed and not that effective. And not always doing good, even. There's a guy who's desperate to find his gloves, praying that his missing glove will turn up, and when it does, he goes to commit crime, getting away with it too, police reports indicate, because, ta-da, he was probably wearing gloves. Ah, to hell with it, God says, and plans to destroy the world in 2 weeks. The prayer department, Daniel Radcliffe and Geraldine Viswanathan as Craig and Eliza, begs God to not destroy the world if they can answer an impossible prayer, getting two introverts to fall in love with each other. God laughs, that'll never happen, and proceeds with his plans to destroy the world. Well, as of this past week, nope, Sam and Rosie, played by John Bass and Lolly Adepifi, not in love. Best keep on that, Craig and Eliza. Good luck! Closing out, I didn't really do Super Bowl ads this year, and I didn't really do the Oscars this past weekend either, but there was a T-Mobile ad that grabbed my attention called "We'll Keep This Brief." At 6:13 p.m., an unsuspecting T-Mobile user messages her friend Kathy the, one might suppose, harmless inquiry, "Hey, what's up?" The cursor indicates Kathy is composing her reply as the ominous opening strains of Azospax Zarathustra mount in anticipation, at which point the following wall of text is received. "Well," oh, and for no reason whatsoever, I'm going to assume Kathy sounds like a Monty Python character. "Well, I've just been thinking a lot lately about my journey and what that means to me as a person and you as a person, and I feel like my life is moving in slow motion. I don't really know how to stop it or make it go fast. It's insane. Ha! I feel like it all started back in 5th grade when my teacher asked me to stop calling out the answers. She stunted me. She stunted my thirst for knowledge, because now I feel I want to call out the answers, but I can't. It's my own life, you know? So that got me thinking about fitness, and I'm just so torn between Pilates and yoga and what's best for me at this moment, in this time of my life. I feel like the challenge part of Pilates is great, but the soulful part of yoga is key. My mom said, find your guideposts, and I'm trying. That also makes me think, what are guideposts?" Somebody wrote this. All of this. It's just scrolling up your screen. Oh, and the music is transitioned to Walter Murphy's funky reimagination of Fifth of Beethoven, but She continues, what are guideposts? Are they man-made? Are they physical objects? Or are they a feeling, an intuition? How will I know when I found a guidepost? It's not going to say, hi, I'm a guidepost, So I want to just find my life's passion, but where to start? Also, before I forget, my diet, currently consisting of potato chips and cereal, but is that really helping me on my journey? I'm happy when I eat those things. They bring me joy, but is it really serving me? I find lately the things I know are bad for me are serving me the best. I guess you could ask, how well are they really serving me then? I think that brings me back to high school, where I knew I wanted to be a cheerleader, even though the school colors washed me out. We were the Tigers, and I looked terrible in orange. She goes on like this, ultimately for 14 seconds, which doesn't sound like a long time, but it's enough to scroll all of that and the following. I look terrible in orange. This has been an ongoing trend in my life. I need to break it. The color orange represents so many things to me now, too, which shows I have an inability to let things go. I need to be content in my choices and find my own path. I read this amazing article the other day about what color your aura is. I found out mine is actually orange. How strange am I to want to cut that color out of my life completely? I wasn't eating any orange things whatsoever, eating cheddar cheese, but yet it's intrinsically a part of my being. I also got a cat, which I happen to know. At this point, the screen cuts to T-Mobile's assurance, we'll keep this brief. Oh, really? Thank God, I thought Kathy was going to start transmitting her terms of service agreement. Finally, I was able to pull in the freeform presentation of Saving Mr. Banks. Absolutely beautiful presentation, one I've been looking forward to seeing again ever since we first saw it in 2013, but this movie is even more exciting than I thought it was before I started writing up this production. The cast list for this emotionally compelling backstory, a making of Mary Poppins, one of Disney's most beloved productions already, stars not only, as I knew, Studio 60's Bradley Whitford as Dawn, but also, as I learned, 6 Feet Under's Rachel Griffiths as Aunt Ellie. Given the run of the shows and the quality of the actors involved, such confluence would hardly be unheard of, but I thought it was so cool to have brought this exact movie in on this specific podcast. Saving Mr. Banks, Studio 6 Feet Under. Just, how wild is that? Beyond that, thank you so much for checking in on my video cataloging project. Oh, and last time I'll mention it here, I'm still looking, please, for any help you can give me in tracking info on medieval-themed sketch comedy and Exhibit E of crowdsourcing at my blog. You can check that out along with catalog listings and audio links at VideoFuzzy.blogspot.com and past episodes at Apple Podcasts and iTunes. Feedback is always appreciated. You can contact me through my blog or podcast sites or through my VideoFuzzy page on Facebook. I've got Exhibit E posted there as well, or you can follow me at TJVideoFuzzy on Twitter. For VideoFuzzy, I'm Terry J. Aman. Happy viewing.
It might be amazing, it might just be scuzzy. We'll find out together on VideoFuzzy.